All right, so tonight we're going to tackle item 6, the cam. Because of the manufacturing method, what we did with the handle last time, so this little handle was forged, and the forging process says that that is going to be a complete piece. Since we will need to have a drawing for the handle, or potentially a separate drawing for the handle and a separate drawing for the cam, we can do that as one part and track it all as item 6. But when it comes down to making working drawings, then I can access this solid body, access this solid body separately. So last time we talked a little bit about some of the contours and regions type things, and then tonight that's going to carry over into merging those bodies. All right, so I'm going to fly this out of the way. We are in inches. I will give you the kind of the expectation that you should be getting comfortable with the relations, getting a little more comfortable with fully defining your sketches, being able to identify those basic geometries: horizontal, vertical, coincident, tangencies, concentricity. Probably about our first 5 or 6 that get comfortable with first, and then we'll expand out to other items, and just general familiarity with the tools. If you've created a part template, then I'm going to encourage you to use your template. If you haven't created a part template and you're going in and changing a bunch of things, it's about time to stop, make those changes one last time and save it to a part template. So when I open up part inch, I have my little blue origin the way that I want it. I have the things shown and inch, pounds, and seconds, and pretty much the work area where I'm comfortable with it. All right, so let's fly this in one more time and get some numbers. So I think from a build standpoint that I kind of like the circle as the origin of the part, since everything kind of radiates off of that geometry. The 30-degree increments are to the radiuses, and we'll have to see how those come up tangent. Because it's drawn on paper does not mean that my relations, my arc geometry is going to be happy in every instance. So if I get it close, that may have to be good enough. We're going to have to decide in the rotation that it kind of looks like the flatter, and then going into the upper radius, that's kind of the critical movement. We get farther over, that's more of relief. Right? It's not acting as much on the cam or the motion. So if one of these is going to fail, probably the 3 inch is going to be my choice to let it become the driven dimension. All right. I don't know that yet, but I'm looking into my magic crystal ball, trying to, okay, what kind of problems might I encounter here, and come up with a solution. So my fingers got ahead of my mouth again, and I right-clicked on the front plane, went up to that little box that said Open Sketch, and that rotated me into position, and my origin went from blue to red. I have the confirmation corner, and the rollback line on the left with Sketch 1 underdefined underneath it is all indicators that I am inside of the sketch ready to draw. Right? If I don't see that red origin, though, then something happened. I got kicked out of the sketch. I changed something. I jumped out. And there are places where it will bump you up. This also has a now let's go ahead and fly it back in because I just noticed it. It has a limit dimension. And we've seen a couple of symmetric dimensions, bilateral, and then this limit dimension, upper lower bound. And so this time on a hole location or a hole size, the smallest number is going to be maximum material condition. So if I'm going to draw this, I'm going to draw it at maximum material condition. Right? Because I want that, something happens that I'm programming this. I hand this off to a CNC programmer, operator. I don't know exactly what we're going to do for that geometry. I'm probably just going to drill it and ream it. Right? Oversized geometry. But that range, I may not have a 2/1000 over reamer. I may have to follow this with a an extended length 1/2 inch end mill and circular interpolate that bore and try to get it to clean up to 627 to be, in the middle. So on the manufacturing side, if that's the case, then I want this programmed at that maximum material so that the control, the machinist at the control can make the decision of how to best achieve that geometry. All right, so we said 626, and there again, my fingers took off on me, so circle, center point at the origin. I pick the origin, and we drag out some distance, and when I let go, I get the circle. Pick on the circle for the dimension, and then 626. All right. If we want to denote the limit dimension, then that's where we're going to come over to tolerance and precision. Now, this will be an introduction to it. It's not going to be a requirement. Right? So as we start to think about tolerances as we build in, then I can go to a limit, and we had 2 thousandths as an upper bound, so 002, and then I have the note 626, 628. Value is 626. Yes. Okay, so let me undo one more time. All right, so the circle's in blue, and I'm able to drag to whatever size. In the upper left is smart dimension, and we'll gradually move away from that smart dimension. Oh, and because the circle was selected, I had it highlighted in blue. The dimension snapped right to it and said, "You must want to dimension that because it was active." So let me escape out of that and escape one more time.
I didn't have the circle selected. That's why I wanted
Yeah, and you don't have to select the circle. All right, so you don't have to have it pre-selected. This has been probably within the last 2 years, 2015, 2016. SolidWorks was anything that's highlighted, and you go into dimension, and that's where I get in trouble because the center point is highlighted, and I think I'm dimensioning the circle, and it says you can't do that. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I want it. Anyway. We can also right-click without the circle being pre-selected, and you'll find the smart dimension on the top row, and sometimes it's the second from the end. In this case, it's the third from the end. All right, this is the same as coming up to the command manager and the smart dimension. As you become familiar with the icons and you get more into the workflow, this is going to be your better choice. All right, and you pause and let the tooltip come up. It's going to tell you it's the smart dimension. But again, there's a lot of little icons, a lot of little things. Go with the things that you're familiar in. As you gradually get a little faster and a little more comfortable with, get comfortable with that workflow, then you're going to expand. Once I have the smart dimension, then I can pick on the circle, and it comes up, puts in the value, and we go ahead and select. All right, and one thing to watch out for with the rebuilds, and that may be why I don't rebuild out of the modify box from our earlier discussion, is watch what happens when I rebuild. It rebuilt the sketch, but it also bumped me out of it. I'm no longer in that sketch. So maybe I don't know that I'll use that as my my preference. So let's try it. I come up here, 626. I hit rebuild. Okay, it didn't. Maybe I associate too much with the other rebuild though. All right, so kind of glad to see that it doesn't. But all right, let's get some more dimensions. So I'm a little concerned about the 30 degrees to the endpoints. So we have a line coming off vertical, and that looks like to the center point. That to the center point. And then there's one more center, but that looks like it's shifted off for the, no? Okay, a little more zoom in. So this got pretty complicated pretty quick. That was kind of my concern, is the 187. So it almost looks like all of those are pulling up different center points, which kind of makes sense. All right, so let's go with the easy one. 3/4 of an inch from the center all the way over, and we'll work around using the relations, and then we'll come back and see if those radiuses need additional information. All right, so that being the case, I'm going to go with my arc selection. If you recognize the current arc as 3-point, and that's what you want to do, you don't have to do the pull down. You can just select on the icon, it'll take you right into 3-point. I want this to be a center point arc. So I've done the pull down, picked on the center point, selected the origin, selected the center. I am still doing the left click and hold down. And when I let go, that gives it its relative position, and then I'm going to left click and drag through the arc. Okay, so let's go ahead and put a dimension on this so I don't have to right click and select or escape or anything. I can go right into the next command and click on the arc and 0.75. All right. Let's see, the next size is going to align, so we'll bring that one down. It's showing me tangency, right? So I'm going from vertical to tangency by following that inference line. You can kind of see the yellow lines. They're not great on the screen, but they are there. So vertical, tangency, vertical, tangency. I want to be tangent. I want that to stay in a smooth transition. What happens if it's not tangent is that we come over to this point and it makes a very subtle change in direction. So as you're building in your relations, those are some things to keep in mind. Continuous arc. I'm still in the line command, but I want to draw that 375. I bring the line off, I go back to the starting point, and then now I have a tangent arc and can go ahead and place it. All right, so
you got the tangent line that wasn't vertical, but what?
The two yellow lines that were crossing the screen, I followed the more kind of up and down yellow line.
Okay, so you put it on the yellow line.
Yes, and you'll also see the little box pop up with the tangency.
Gotcha.
So a dimension, 375. And then I still want that 1.5. Follow it back. But that one doesn't quite look, and that's where it gets a little convoluted. Okay, so 30 degrees to the center, 1.5, 1.312. I'm making more of that center point probably than it needs to be. So that being the case, I'm out of the command. I'm back in the dimensions, so I can either hit escape and, okay, maybe not, right click and hit select, or go into the next command. I'm going to go this time to tangent arc, and keep in mind that if even though I pick center, or I pick the tangent arc, if I decide, center would have really been better, I can come over to the arc type and switch to center point, switch to tangent arc, switch to 3-point. And there's also the A key, which will toggle you through. All right, so one of those in the background kind of things. All right, so we're going to bring that off. And I can see its center point floating around up here, so let's go with the dimensions as we're working through this. So 1.5. And then back to select. And now tangent is active. It's telling me that I'm ready for the tangent arc. I'm going to come off of that arc right into another tangent arc. And then back into select or switch over to smart dimension. And 1.312. Let's see, there's one more intermediate arc of 0.625. Wow, this thing's looking scarier by the second. What did I get myself into? Alright, so somewhere around there. and dimension 0.625. And then the last arc for tangent, bring it up, and I'll go into the dimension, 3 inches. Interesting. Alright, well, we came up with some center points. Alright, so let's take a look at everything went tangent except for this last one. Alright, and I can tell that it's not tangent because if I set my pencil down and follow this around, I get over here and I change direction. It's not a smooth transition. So this is going to be a select, control, select. So select the arc, hold down the control button, select the next arc, and then I'm going to get on the pop-up tangency, or I come over to the property manager and tell it to go tangent. Alright. So now I have to commit to some of these lines. So as I drag this around, okay, so watch for, I just did the inversion, watch for the inversion. I'm dragging something that's fairly complex. I kind of suspect that it might not be happy about some of those things. So, all right, we have 30 degrees, and the radius, hard to tell if that came off of. So that's a strange way to dimension it, but okay. So this center line, and then those 30 degrees are coming off of
different points.
Yeah, they sure are.
The width there isn't given.
Yeah.
Which initially led me to believe was like above it.
Yeah. So if that one's going 1875 below, and then the 1.5 is off to the side, the 1.312 comes off of that center line. All right. So 1.312. And this is going to be vertical. All right, so I want to watch. So in this case, the diamond is going to be a quadrant. Not really what I want to select, and I definitely don't want the midpoint. Let's see, the 312, if that's the end point. Let's see what happens when we make it vertical. Oh, that was the 1.5. No, 1.5 went over there. Nice. All right, this is one I really should have done my homework and looked at before we started. All right, 625, 30 degrees. Oh, one more. And that 30 degrees and that 30 degrees are off at the center point. So let's try that first. All right, so there. And then to the 0.625. There. I do want one to be infinite length and vertical. Oh, wow, that was fun. Let's not go there just yet. Oh, actually, yeah, I was still in that one. Okay, so be careful when stuff is highlighted, because it may do what you told it to do. In that case, it did exactly what I told it to do. So clicking out or hitting escape clears the selections. Center line, infinite length, and vertical. And the other property should have been a clue for me, but and we'll go between the two lines. When it sees the non-parallel lines, it'll automatically go into the angle, so 30 degrees. And oh, it'd help if I placed it. 30 degrees and 30 degrees. And I'm just digging myself in deeper, can't help it. Alright, so that doesn't look too bad. We said that point was going to be 1.875. I got a... Nope. Okay, so 0.187. Starting to look like something. Don't know what, but we're getting closer. All right, so we got to decipher this this out. So no center point. It's 45 degrees to those points. If the 1.5 and the 1.312 meet at that location, let's say I thought it was going to be that one. Okay, so is over. Okay, that one went to
It
depth.
doesn't look like those angles are meeting at the same point.
Well, that's no fun.
It's like the
Yeah.
center of the one 30 degrees on the right.
Yeah, it is.
It's a completely separate point.
Well, we may have to cheat. Since we're not given dimensions. Wouldn't be the first time we didn't have all the dimensions.
You say that the second center line is probably like the 16th.
Ooh, yeah. We're given 2 inches as an overall.
They share the same center line. The same.
Let's see, leave. Let's see what kind of trouble that's going to cause. Liters. And then I get my max because I picked the point. Alright, so I'm going to start pushing buttons. Oops, and definitely didn't want to do that. Alright, so we have the earlier drawing. We're going to go back to the previous revision. And I think I've got these annotated now where I can put them up for you, so we're going to see if there's any better information in here. At least with it not being in the isometric. We got some fractional dimensions, which is a little more interesting. Okay, so radius, that makes a little more sense, not being at the angle. And there's the 3/16 down.
The 30s are on the center line.
Wow. Okay, so it'd be nice to know where that line is. And that goes that way. So I heard a 16th. Any other number? Any other?
The 3/16 is not. It's the dimension of 1.5 and 1 5/16.
Okay.
And then it's not for the 1.5. Those are the 3/16 and then something else.
Okay, I'm
1.5
following.
was the center point that was like the 16th or something across that we don't have a dimension for.
Okay, so
That's about right. About a 60. I say you lead.
16th are on the same. They're on the same line. All right, so there's my point. Okay, so we brought that one up. I don't know that that was a good guess either. All right, so I expect when you turn this in, following my examples, that I will get completely different cams from everybody. Best interpretation. No right or wrong answer here. We don't know. Need more information. We get to a point where we make a drawing on this. This will be our first drawing, so I can give you the information that we guessed at, so that if we get to a point where this can be consistent, that actually looks pretty good except for the gap. So, it's that I really wanted that that half-inch center point to be in that vertical relation, though. So, being produced in 1930, I don't think that we can call up the original draftsman and say, "Hey, what were you thinking here?" So that's probably out of our options. 1.5 is equal to. So let's see what that looks like if we just go horizontal. Overdefined. And I made this from driven to driving. That puts it back. All right, so driven and driving is a way of alternating. All right, so right now the 187 is there, but it's not participating. The overall, which we wanted at 2 inches, because that was our stock size, assuming that that would stay, and overall would be helpful, but doesn't look like we're going to get that either. 5/16, 1.5 on horizontal, but not vertical. All right, so horizontal, and kaboom! So this is about the point where I decide, am I going to spend the next hour deciphering? Or are we going to call this good and then determine which dimension I put in that really doesn't apply here? Okay, so I'm watching those inferences because that's going to try to go coincident with my center line. I still really want that one to be horizontal. And if we go back to that one being vertical, so close. We may only get this part done tonight the way this is going. So still a little shift there, a little shift there. And then what was the 1875 was from here to, and pre-select, no. Got the dimension, but wants to be driven. All right, one more pass, and then we're going to figure it out. And if you notice, one thing I'm not prepared to do is fix. We're not going to fix our geometry and hope for the best. We're going to come up with a solution. And I'll explain a little more about that here in a second. So that comes off, still coming off vertical, 1 5/16, 30 degrees. I'm calling the endpoints. That still looks like the transition point should be vertical. Okay, let me out of that. Escape everything. So close. One angle or one more dimension would go a long way. Now, another one still selected. Alright, so I'm going to make that dimension driven, because it is staying at the 1875. I don't have any other numbers there. All right, we're going with the 1/16. We find out later. If we find out later it's something else, then we'll observe it in the assembly. So I have the two regions. Basically, it's showing me the nested. What's going to be interesting here is if this goes to 4764. No, not playing that game. So let's see what this one 734. That number I can relate to. If all we had was the 4764s, then when I go into the features and tell this to extrude, I would like to be able to draw that handle in my front plane conveniently. So I want this to be mid-plane. Blind in condition says that my center line will be to one side or to the other. Mid-plane says we're going to stay at that, half goes one way, one half goes the other. 47 divided by 64. I can do that math, and if we tab, 734,375. Do I need it to 6 decimal places? It's not. It's actually is going to round it down, and depending on which way we go. So we can leave it. But I have some issues with doing that even so. All right. Let's not do that again. So let me remind you to save and save often. That this item is part 6. The cam. And we'll save. All right, so let's let me just highlight. And so this was the driven dimension, but the rest of the items that we got to here were off of the drawing. That one got kind of kicked up there a little bit, and so that was the one dimension. So if you're trying to come back and follow along, this is what it should look like, at least for right now. All right, so the easy part, I should have done the handle first, knowing that it was the easy part. I want to have a separate body because of that whole weld thing. All right, so going back into the front plane, we did mid-plane, so the front plane would bisect the part. And when I open the sketch, I can right-click on the front plane, go into the sketch, and we need a center line. It's not going to be horizontal or vertical, but it's not going to hurt my feelings to be infinite length. And then we've done one of the 3 angular dimensions. So let's go to a second. It was 45 degrees. So in this case, if I were to pick the origin and the line, nope, has to be an endpoint. All right, infinite length's not going to work. There's no way to change from infinite length back. All right, I can't come back and uncheck. Once I've infinite lengthed it, it is going to stay infinite length. So delete on the keyboard. Center line to the endpoint. And then we'll pull off that dimension. Let's see, our linear overall was 8 from the center point. So we can do that. I only went to that anyway, so linear, 8 inches. All right, so setting that angle, I go to the endpoint or to the origin, and then I select the line, and we'll get the 4-headed arrow. When I select any of the arrows, that is going to set a direction, and I can put my 45 degrees without additional construction geometry. But it has to be the endpoint and an object or center line. Yeah, establishing, and it's going to be in reference to your quadrants. Your current horizontal, vertical, related to the origin. It's going to be in those references. Could have drawn another center line and gone through that. But I want to make you aware of those arrows because there are going to be times where you set the dimension and you click and all of a sudden, wow, there's 4 arrows there. What do they do? What did I click on? All right, so you have to be ready to make that decision. Dimensioning wise, or I'm putting the handle connecting to the item welded. There's probably going to be some kind of weld fixture. Choice is, do we want to put any kind of spot face? That's another machining operation to locate. And I think my fixture will probably take in, and I can weld into those gaps and get a pretty strong connection. So I'm going to leave the little fingernails between the between the handle and the tangency. All right. So what that means is we will start with the line, picking up. I've got two boxes there. The white is intersection, the yellow is coincident. So at the very least, I'm going to get coincident, and then it's showing me perpendicular to the center line, and then we'll bring that out. Okay, and let's see if it rotates. No, that's so all right. Combine that. All right, and then the question is to dome or not to dome. If we're going to dome, then we need to back this off by 375. If we're going to leave it flat, then we'll just bring this up and make it square. Okay, and then I can set perpendicularity manually. But we'll take a look at the dome, but we probably won't add it since it's showing as mostly flat. Well, we can look at the earlier drawing too. And I put this in at 0.75. All right, at this point I realize I didn't make my center line long enough, or when I go to revolve this, it has to be a completely closed sketch, and I'll just make that an object line. Maybe. There we go. When I go to object line, it loses the diametral. It can no longer calculate, and it automatically kicks it back to linear 375, or my half dimension. I can do that, and there's no issues, other than when I go to make this revolve, I have to pick what was my center line as the axis of revolution. And 360 degrees, hopefully there's not any gap. Oh, yeah, there is a gap. So since I extended this all the way in, still picking. Selected contours highlighted in blue. Grab the region, and let's see if that completes. Intersects the center line, so it really doesn't like that point. So that's an issue. All right. Well, let's see what trim does. Trim would not be my first choice, but trim is certainly a choice. And associated dimensions. And that's kind of why it would be my first choice. All right, I really don't want to lose all that information. So as an alternative, less, probably less common, or maybe not in the first thoughts, is to come down to the sketch tools and split the entities. All right, split entities is one that I really like a lot, and we had the comment last time of, really don't trim a lot anymore. I will split the entities because this will let me put a point, and when I hit OK, I can bring that point back to its connection. That goes to a construction line, or I could leave it. It's it's separate now, so there's not a intersection fault. And then it's also, since it's a center line, and it automatically was collinear, coincident, however we look at it. When I go to the revolve, I should automatically get the revolve because it has an axis of revolution again. So, point is that realize there's multiple ways to get to this point. Tinker with the commands, go through the process, and make the mistakes. That went back to almost completely underdefined. I had my relations, but I lost the dimensions. All right, well, if I have to, I redimension it. But if I can come up with or understand that there is an alternate way, even if I don't remember all of it, I'm going to practice. I'm going to try and attack those problems.
If you're doing the angle off of the horizontal line, you do that trim, it'll still keep the angle.
Maybe, but then I would have two center lines to revolve around. So we're playing the poker game of does my two little deuces beat your full house? 20 some odd people in this class. I would expect that, especially with this complexity, this level of complexity, that there will be 22 different ways to approach this drawing. All right, so we mentioned the dome. I will throw that in there. Normally, since we were doing this sketch, I would have just gone ahead and completed the arc. If we were going, well, pretty much like last time. Under the insert, and it will be under features, there are all of the available features. Okay, most all of the available features. And one of those is dome. And when you go into the dome, height will be 375. If we truncate it, then it gets a little bit, so the radio we can kind of, do you want to have a knob on the end of it? Do you want it to be just barely? We can kind of see what it looks like. If we go to elliptical, then it will follow the contour regardless, not bulge. So machining that, we're on a CNC turning center trying to figure out your geometry and get a tool to go in and make that shape. So when we start designing the next lipstick tube, I think we're right there. All right, so dome has some interesting, also if it is reversed, it will make the associated cup. Also is difficult to machine on the end of that 3/4 inch geometry, so make sure you need it. All right, so I mentioned the drawing. This is probably a good one to bring in. Let's try the weld. I suspect that this is going to be an issue. I also wanted to mention solid bodies. So before we get into the weld, notice that this threw up two solid bodies. If your solid bodies folder was not active, it would be automatic, and you would still see this. As soon as that second body was created, you're going to get it. It's there. All right, so boss extrude 1, revolve 1, and mainly this is touching the arc at that intersecting line. That is the only contact. All right, there's no intersection, there's no overlapping of geometry, so I don't even get the option to merge. But under the feature, merge result is unchecked, and it will stay unchecked. There's no way to merge this geometry coming at a zero thickness, single point of contact. All right, so later on, when we do multi-bodies, we may consciously uncheck merge result, even though those parts could be joined together without issue. All right. So much more involved in the background. All right, we're going to use these strategies to our advantage, in that the two bodies, I can make separate drawings, but I really don't want to make an assembly, track part 1, put part 2 in, throw the weld on it. I only really need this one part and a manufacturing drawing. So let's see if we can find it here. Tools, nope. Weldments, weld. Let's see if the weld bead will play. All right. Not feeling very warm and fuzzy about the weld path, because I have that gap. It's not going to fill that geometry. Probably not. All right, that would also tend to affect my, and I really don't want to go that far. I have a solution, but I've already made this confusing enough. Or already made this kind of out there. So one of the things we could do is direct edit this face and extend it so that it does intersect, and then weld in between. If you understood any of those words, then go ahead and go through that process. Otherwise, that's something that I'll wait on. All right, so if I get this intersecting correctly, I can put a weld between what would be this face and this face, and actually detail how I want it welded, what the styles are, and it will actually create a third solid body for the weld bead. So kind of cool. The quick solution, though, since I really want to see that weld bead, see if that weld bead will work, is to remove the coincidences, change that from that to that, and now we're making an assumption that I'm going to put some kind of spot face or some kind of machine face on this canvas.
Why didn't you just create that shaft in the same radius as the outside of that? So that they fit together.
Yeah, that's in effect what we're doing. If I understand.
Extending it to the part.
Yeah, I'm not calling it out specifically, but yeah, that's kind of the assumption. So bringing it up tangent where it'll come around in contact, I should eliminate that gap. Okay, everything except for that little tiny fingernail, which, how obsessive compulsive do I want to be? Yeah, pretty obsessive compulsive. That one's going to bother me. Notice that I still have the solid bodies.
That didn't affect the actual length of it.
It will when we make the drawing.
It's still 8 inches.
In effect, I added, whatever the 16th, whatever, maybe 72 thousandths or something that we added onto that. In that respect, no, it's not affecting the part, but on this solid body, it did lengthen it. So, critical or not critical? Probably not critical. Until we make 10,000 of them, somebody says, hey, it weighs too much, and we can't do that. All right, so here's the merge result. And if I go back, we had 2 solid bodies. I come back. Now that I have full engagement, I have full contact, I can merge the bodies, and we're right back to the forging, 1 solid body. If you are set to automatic, this folder will disappear again, and you will not see the Revolve 1. All right, only if the solid bodies are shown under that options feature something or other, whatever it was. Then you'll be able to identify when there's 1 or when there's 10 solid bodies. All right, so I still don't want that to merge, and we'll see why in a minute. And I'm not concerned about that that length. And like I said, if I need to, maybe we run a flat in there so that contacts and helps with the weld fixture. I don't know. This is a what-if scenario that if I'm redesigning this, I'm making the decisions. You are the designer. Ultimately, if you run into this problem, I'm almost going to say, don't stop to ask me, because I'm probably going to tell you you're the designer. Solve it. All right? If it's something that, we come up in design review and we're all up on, the weekly design review or, however often it comes back, then we can bring it up. Hey, I ran into this. What's everybody's input? Is this going to increase the cost? Is it going to be cost prohibitive? Does it matter? In which case, everybody makes the decision, and we just present the ideas. Okay, so, for our purposes, for this exercise, if you make a decision, and it's a good decision, just stand by it, and, if I make a different decision, not a big deal. We're not going to, nitpick details. All right, so let me double check, edit, merge results off. We'll save one more time. And for the drawing, let's see, we'll go back to the templates. The standard drawing will come up into this module with the ISO standards, uncheck only show, and then you will have everything in the list. I'm going to take the different track of, I just want a nice blank 8.5 by 11 sheet. No title block, no properties, nothing. Custom, and I got to do the conversion because I always end up typing in 11 inches by 8.5 inches. And make sure you get the INs on the end of it since it showed in metric. It's expecting metric. And okay, yeah, you forget. Yeah, your inch part is, or it's so huge that the paper is just one part of it too. All right, so we want to bring in the cam. I'm not worried about this border. Next time I rebuild, the border will shrink in a little bit. Inch, pounds, and seconds, 1:1, and we bring in the cam. Notice that in the configurations, we can select bodies. All right, I have 2 bodies. Conveniently enough, I can make a drawing for each of those bodies. So I want to just go ahead and create the multiple views of the assembly first. And let's see, is the right side going to do us any good? So that's kind of always the first question I ask is, the front and the top, Yeah, okay. And an isometric would be nice. All right, we'll stay with those. So I have my basics. If I had the weld, the intersection would be showing up. Not a big deal. Let's go ahead and rebuild. Let's see, what is it? The fun one, new install. So this doesn't happen enough, so let me emphasize. Right click, and at the very bottom, oh, sorry, got out of the mix. When I picked the view, it changed pop-ups on me. So I want to make sure that I'm not picking a view, and we're going to expand out, and I want to customize this menu. Very rarely am I deleting, but I'll leave it in there. But I do want to see the properties. So that properties box that's unchecked, I'm going to check it. Okay, so again, that was come out here into the open area at the very bottom, customize menu, check the properties. If I don't want to delete, copy anything else in here, I can uncheck this. So let's just go ahead and uncheck delete so we can see it. I don't care if you want to put delete on there or not, but basically I have exchanged delete for properties. Properties takes me into the sheet, shows me the sheet name and the scale, that I'm in third angle. We'll talk a little bit more about third angle and first angle projection later on. Custom sheet size, and then that all-important property values from default. That's later on if we are associating. So this is one of the reasons why I'm ignoring the title block initially. And then we'll come back and change it. Yes?
When we turn in parts, should we have them on the sheet, or do you mind if we have a zip folder full of parts?
Zip folder full of parts unless I've requested a drawing sheet. So like this one, for the cam, you get this far, you struggle through the all of that geometry and you make this drawing sheet, then it will be part of your folder and it will get sucked up with the zip file to upload anyway. So in this case, yes, I would expect to see the sheet. All right, so overall dimensions, we got the center mark came in automatically. Could put a center line. If you want to see hidden lines, I always base it on, are the hidden lines going to show anything useful? So here, yeah, it's kind of an intersection. And I would like the top view to follow the parent style. Well, that just became too complicated. Now it's more busy than I really think is functional. All right, are all those hidden lines telling me anything useful? Not as much as I would like. So we'll stay with the parent style so we can see what happens. When I click on the primary view, the front view, and the front view and the top view will move together. The top view moves independently up and down, associated, aligned to. When I try to go left and right, the alignment prevents it from moving left to right. Isometric is completely independent. All right, so when I click on this view, because I've set the other one to be to the parent side style, we will go back to hidden lines removed and have the geometry. Coming down to the lower left, I can left click on the add sheet. That gives me the next piece of geometry. If we go, let's do model view, and we'll bring in the cam one more time. Except now I just want the cam. So let's select bodies. All right, when I select the body, I want to see just the cam. All right, we're still creating multiple views. And again, top, bottom, side view, probably, when in doubt, put in those four. And you can always delete the one view out later. Okay, so that comes in. Interesting little misalignment. Sweet. I have no idea why I did that. All right, so let's talk about alignment. Let's right-click and on alignment, I want to break the alignment so that's free to move. And let's go back in and see if we can realign it. Let's go align. It should have been by origin. All right, that snapped it into place. And those move together. And without the third one, I can't really tell which one is. Oh, okay, so it aligned the top view back to the front view. Strange. All right, so I'm a little freaked out right now. Properties. Oh, well, let's see. 2016. On the very bottom, you have a scale for the sheets, and if I were to bump that up to 1:1, that's a little bit more appropriate for my 8.5 by 11 A-size sheet. So I have one part. I have its solid body, and I have the dimension. We go one more time. Let's see. We have brought in from model view. Let's take a quick look at the feature palette because there are some advantages to, sorry, not the feature palette, the view palette. And there is the cam. And we are going to auto start the projection. Let's just stay with the front view. All right, so I'll bring in the front view, and wow, that's really an impressive scaling job. Since it brought everything in again, now I have to go after the fact and select bodies, and the scope will be just the handle. Handle's not very functional at at the 45-degree angle. I could go ahead and dimension that, but walk out on the shop floor and the machinists are going to be rotating at 45 degrees going, yeah, I don't think so. So why don't we go ahead and just rotate this view. All right, so the drawing, let's see, what does it actually pop up as? Highlight the drawing view. And then the rotate view in this case is not rotating the screen, it's rotating that view. We knew that we wanted to go 45 degrees, and when I apply it, I got a 50-50 shot. It's either going to go vertical or horizontal. I'm very happy that it went horizontal, and when I go to its projected view to bring the end geometry, it adds the center line. Scale is probably a little on the large side. And notice that my view window is still picking up like the whole thing, everything that was in that part. But overall, I'm pretty good with that. And then, still not quite ready to jump in the dimensions, other than to say that the dimensions are similar to. And 7.35, well, 3/4 of an inch. It was probably 0.25, so we added about 100 thousandths doing that full intersection thing. So again, not a big deal. We're making a decision. As the project evolves and we get closer to manufacturing and going further on into the design review and approval of the drawings, we'll make those decisions.
But that thing is originally supposed to be 8 inches long.
8 inches from the center line.
Oh. Okay.
So we're subtracting at the very minimum, we're subtracting the 3/4 of an inch to get 7 1/4. It's showing 7.35, so that was where I got that 100 thousandths of interference. All right, so my 72 thousandths guess was really close by a mile. All right, so don't get too wrapped up in the particulars. This is a complicated sketch. You're going to learn a lot from this sketch just doing this cam, but prepare to struggle a little bit with it. All right, if you find that you're spending a lot of time with it, let me know, and this may be one of the parts that I do in Inventor or I do in NX, and I provide it to you. All right, I don't want these to be torture mechanisms, but I want it to be a good learning experience. All right, so dimensioning. We got to throw a few minutes on this, and then we'll let's see. Annotation. We have center marks. All holes, fillets, slots. No, not really. No, not really on the slot. I would, in this case, I don't want to extend the lines. So I'm going to deselect. And as I go through and pick my arcs, I'm going to start to see those center marks popping up. And then that one should be at the center, so I really don't need to duplicate it. All right, so that'll give me something to dimension to. Haven't changed colors, so we're going to go with. Keep in mind that this is the ISO standard, so it's not putting the leader, the little dogleg leader. It's in line with the dimension, or the dimension is in line with the extension line. And as I go through and apply these, we're going to pull out that geometry. And notice everything is a radius because I'm picking arcs. As soon as I go to the circle, I'm going to go switch. It's going to automatically switch to a dimensional dimension. All right, smart dimension between the marks. When you are picking center marks, be aware of the horizontal verticals because they will show you things like 90 degrees. Right, if I were to pick that one and that one as opposed to the two vertical marks. So horizontal and horizontal, 0.19. All right. And then that one didn't quite show up through, so we will do 1.73. All right. It's a basic drawing.
Can you show the dimensions? Because you already created them in the geometry of the model.
Yeah, and that's always a be careful because, well, let's go ahead and see what it, I don't know if it'll find mine or not. So there is this thing called, once I find it again, model items. Oh, and I forgot to explain, maybe you picked it up from the previous videos, that in my drawings there are purple extension lines rather than, or purple dimensions rather than black dimensions. I have my options set to mark only what I tell it to mark, not everything. We're going to go selected feature and marked for drawing. Technically, I didn't mark any for drawing. They were all in purple. So I want to bring in all dimensions. And that's where I have the problem with the logic on the whole mark to drawing. So we'll do that next time because I can talk a little while about that one. But go ahead and bring in not marked for drawing. Was slew import option to entire model. Sure. Pretty close. Radius 3, radius 3. Now the the real issue is that well, now I've created the duplicates. Plus it remembered my 30 that I forgot. The real issue is that if this is a really complex drawing and I designed for convenience, but the machining, the manufacturing drawing is not going to use any of those dimensions, I definitely don't want to import those, any of those dimensions. Only the dimensions that I apply. So a lot of times, in this case, it came across nearly perfect. Okay, I was less than perfect. It came across perfect. Operator error. So don't get too wrapped up on this, but make, hopefully you have a good time, have fun doing this. And if it stretches more than the hour that I've spent on it, more than about the 15 or 20 minutes that it went through to decipher those dimensions, call it. Come back to it later, or let me know. And again, I'll provide the model as a translation file so that we can also use that as a learning experience.